So it's been a busy week or so for Battlefield 6, and while we're prepping for the reveal later next week, on the 31st, there's still quite a bit to discuss in the meantime. Today I want to fill you in on a bit more in regard to the upcoming multiplayer experience and how classes will be shaped specifically for the open beta, because we got direct confirmation from the lead producer on Battlefield 6 about how this will work. So drop your thoughts, drop a like, and make sure to subscribe to stay updated with all things Battlefield 6 as we gear up for the multiplayer reveal, which again will be live here from the event on the channel on the 31st. So would love to have in the community for that. But anyways, let's get into it. So let's start out with the class system as a whole. Battlefield has had a few variations in the class system over the history of the franchise. Most recently though, with 2042, there really wasn't much of a focus on specific weapons for specific classes. Instead, the classes and weaponry were not mutually exclusive. You could play any weapon you wanted as an assault main, as a recon, medic, or engineer. But for many of the veterans, Battlefield is at its best when there are class locks, prioritizing certain team play and encouraging specific roles for specific players and specific weapons. So that's what made the debate spark so fast when the Battlefield team had mentioned a few months back in their first look at the class system for Battlefield 6 that they'd be having open classes where weapons could be used with any class, but prioritizing a bit more of additional class benefits rather than just weapon usage. Naturally, that was met with a large amount of dissatisfaction, and while everything that leaked out of labs up until that point really looked promising, it was like a one big blemishing point for a lot of players. Then, fast forward a bit to just a few weeks ago, and we saw that the team at DICE came back with an additional update, a part 2 that essentially just clarified things a bit further on additional benefits like the training paths, but ultimately still doubled down on the fact that classes would include open weapon usage, nothing locked for a specific class. And that, well, people didn't like that. But what's so interesting to me about the whole situation is that 10 days after that, it was announced again, a sort of part 3 on the official Battlefield socials this time. Open weapons versus closed weapons. Why not both? Starting at open beta, players can choose official playlist with signature weapons locked to class or not. More to come. Now, to me, why that's interesting is because just 10 days earlier, they doubled down on something that they likely knew would be getting that negative reception from their loyal fan base. But I kind of felt like, if you just would have waited a little bit longer, you could have tethered those two messages together, kind of skipped the whole, oh, they're not listening to our feedback mantra, and actually been like, yeah, we are, and you can try them out for yourselves. So it was one of those things I didn't quite understand the messaging rollout of that, but either way, the beta looks to feature 2 distinct ways that you'll be able to play with directly and engage with in Battlefield 6 depending on how you feel. But one nice update to the situation was that David Sirlund, the lead producer at DICE on Battlefield 6, later clarified just to what extent we'll see the class system in this sort of dual system for the beta. In an attempt to bring more light to the verbiage of the systems in place, Battlefield creator Enders mentioned the specific callout of signature weapons locked to class. That means that signature weapons applies to the whole weapon class, but not every weapon class. So that would mean that assault rifles are locked to assault, SMGs are locked to engineer, LMGs locked to support, and snipers locked to recon, but that other weapons like DMRs, shotguns, carbines, and the like are still universal, that they can be used across any different class you may like. Then David Sirlund explained simply, correct, that this would be akin to Battlefield 4's class system, one that was universally pulled during the first 2 community updates in that debate of what they should do for class locks as kind of like the North Star for how it should be handled. So not bad to see that directly confirmed by the lead producer on the game itself, that North Star is exactly what they're aiming for. So far, out of just the reveal trailer, we've seen a solid number of weapons already. We've seen the Ace-32, SCAR-L, G36, and HK433 ARs, the UMP, the MPX, and the MP5 SMGs, the RPK, Ultimax 100, and M60 LMGs, the SV98M bolt-action sniper, the M4A1 HK417 and an AK205 carbines, the M14 EBR and the Keltec RFB DMRs, the M1014 shotgun, the AT4 rocket launcher, the M18 pistol, and the sledgehammer melee. So with those weapons in mind, how the system would work, those ARs, SMGs, LMGs, and snipers would be locked, but the rest, not so much. So if you're playing support, you'd have access to everything but the Ace-32, SCAR-L, G36, HK433, UMP, MPX, MP5, and the SV98M sniper rifle. Everything else on that list you'd be able to play around with. And what's nice is that that's just from the reveal trailer. That's not what we've seen even in the build to come for the reveal and the beta itself, or the full launch version, because there's more than likely going to be weapon restrictions that not every weapon from the full game is going to make the beta, playing in a limited capacity with that just to give a sort of taste of what's to come. So there is going to be a lot more to consider and a lot more to be able to give or take on how this will work out. Now, the question though is, where will this be implemented? Because the beta for sure will focus on both of these two systems, open or closed. Whatever you want to play with, you'll be able to play around with, at least in the beta. I would be very curious to see what happens with the multiplayer reveal, because that will likely be the build that we have for the beta, if the beta truly is as rumored shortly after the multiplayer reveal. But I also find it hard to believe that we'd see however many creators there are streaming and playing, changing playlists to jump into two different variations of how the class system would work. So I'm almost imagining that we'll see one or the other at the multiplayer reveal, but not both, to which, if that's the case, don't sweat it. If it's one that you don't quite like shown off the multiplayer reveal, you're going to have both options in the beta. And I think that's where it gets important. When it comes to the beta, especially if it's a free open beta, play as much as you can. It will be equally important to voice your preference and opinion on which of the two class systems you enjoy more, but the one that truly means the most to the developers, investors, anyone associated with the project comes down to playtime. If you have a strong preference of one or the other, and you end up contributing to a landslide pull for one version of the system or the other, it'll absolutely go so much further in making that the stable constant going forward for the framework of the game. After all, in 2025, it sure seems like the only thing that publishers are really after is your playtime, which in a business perspective makes sense. So put your voice into action. Actually play a ton of the beta upcoming. And the nice part, it seems like right now, based off of the timing of when this should happen, if the beta does indeed happen at the beginning here of August upcoming, well, if the game does launch as leaked on October 10th, then we'll have about 2 months time to end up getting actual feedback taken into account and then prepped and ready to be certified and then get ready ahead of the launch of the game. Probably for a lot of these AAA titles, it's about 3 to 4 weeks in terms of that certification process, pressing it to discs, getting it out to distributors and all that kind of stuff. So probably about 4 to 5 weeks after the beta, we could see that feedback still be taken into account. So if this was one of those things they announced would happen in regards to the class system being one or the other based off of community feedback and how many people didn't quite like the idea of open weapons, this should still give us enough time to see that change implemented, especially if it is something they have ready to go in regards for the beta. They have that system in place to kind of toggle between two different playlists, so I wouldn't be surprised if that genuine feedback could end up dictating which way this goes for launch. But anyways, just wanted to fill you guys in a bit more about the specifics of how Battlefield 4 is the North Star here for this additional system in play for how the locked class system will work going into the beta and potentially beyond, whereas you still will have the 2042 option of playing with everything open, but it really comes down to what you, the player, would like to do and how you interact with it. So that's going to wrap it up. Just wanted to fill you guys in ahead of the multiplayer reveal coming later this week. So drop your thoughts down below. Are you guys looking forward to trying out both of these for yourself? Is there one in particular you're going to absolutely be hitting hard, whether it be the open or the locked classes? Let me know. But if you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Battlefield 6 as we gear up for more with the multiplayer reveal and beyond. But for now, thanks so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.